Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. I know it's a cold day to come out and do this, but I appreciate you all taking a few minutes out of your busy schedules. Today, the objective is to finalize, hopefully, the growth plan amendment. You will remember that we have two actions that this steering committee is involved in. One is to finalize the amendment to our growth plan, which has not been updated since 2000. And so Croy has been helping us with that. We've had several public hearings with that. The main piece of that is the map, and everybody has seen that. I think we've sent it out and you've had a chance to look at it. But that is just amending our current growth plan. Our hope is today is to get approval from this steering committee to finalize that, and if we do, it will go to the county commission. They'll review it. I'm sure there'll be public review, and then hopefully if they approve it and pass it, then it will go to the planning commission, which is a little backwards, but that's just the way the law reads in this one particular incident. So that will be the main focus of the day. If we have time, we can discuss the comprehensive plan, which should come in right on the heels of that, and the idea would be that depending on what minor changes, I know we discussed a few minor changes on that, to have one more meeting of the steering committee sometime in late February. The final draft will be emailed to you earlier in February. You'll have a week or so to review it, have one final meeting, and then that one will be finally approved and then moved on. So been a lot of work, a lot of time from everybody, a lot of great input all over the county. We had people from all 8 commission districts that gave input in public meetings. So it's been a long road to get here, but I think it's going to be a good document. I think it's going to be great for our county. So I think Ethan Green will be dialing in remotely. He's with Croy, and then Houston Matthews is here, and I will turn it over to Houston.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't have very much more to add. Ethan's on the call, and I've asked him to give us a quick, just a really overall draft, a rough overview of the growth plan document itself. But again, it's in its final version, and in our opinion, ready for your acceptance. And as the Commissioner said, it goes to the County Commission for adoption, and then to the Planning Commission for adoption and acceptance. So Ethan, take it away, and just as we just discussed, just give us a quick review of the growth plan. If we can get through that, we'll kind of touch on comprehensive plan if there's any comments or questions related to that.
Sounds great. All right, we'll just do the quick executive summary of our growth plan here. As far as the text, the document was not a massive overhaul. This was more of an update. So if you compare what we have now to what was passed in 2000, what we really wanted to do was go and adjust the numbers that were in there in terms of budget, in terms of population, facilities. And so I put together a rough draft with what I had based on the budget that was passed this cycle and the information I could find online, and that circulated. And then I got some feedback. Commissioner Walter chimed in. I got some school board feedback, some fire department feedback, some feedback from the sheriff. All of those changes, we held up on when we revised the map, and then when we put together the final draft, those were revisions were made. So the final draft of the document should include accurate budget information, industry, population projections, and the other change that was made was in the designation of rural and main growth areas. We wanted to make sure that along with the map, we spent most of our time preparing, and that is what was circulated many times and revised. We got feedback, we had our meetings, that what was in the document matched what was on the map and defined how we should read the map. But most importantly, what we have is the map document itself. Each of our Lincoln County's constituent municipalities maintained their urban growth boundaries, so none of those have changed from 2000 to now. What did change was Lincoln County's county growth areas. What we have is sort of three separate ideas. We have some growth areas along major corridors, so these are along state highways in the county, and then we have community growth areas where we have communities within the county that may see some community growth happen or may not. And then the biggest one, the one that kind of had the most revision, the most attention paid to it, and it went through several cycles, is how the county approached the southern gateway of the county on the Alabama border along Huntsville Highway. And so that started out a little bit larger and has been narrowed down and more well-defined as to where growth is permitted, where it won't be permitted, to make sure that the county is positioned in a place where it can take advantage of traffic that goes up and down the area and growth and development that comes to the area, while still making sure that the nature and character of the county is preserved. And so the final draft here, I think, strikes a balance that folks were looking for between the county that they love and making sure that the county can continue to support the growth. And that's where we are. I think that this map has been circulating for a while, and the document's been out there. So really, what we'll do now, I think Houston and Daniels will open it up for questions.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're hearing from. Ethan, would you mind showing on, or sharing your screen with the latest map, and maybe we could full screen that on our side. But yes, Commissioner, unless you think differently, I think it's, if there are any questions or.
I know Mayor Newman had some.
I had no question as far as the map. I guess I agree totally with the map. I guess if there's a question of when we proceed, these areas that are along the road, if there's an adjoining property, are we okay on using that they could be zoned for growth as long as it adjoins that? Like if you're going up to 431, if it joins the green property, can it be zoned for the things that would be in the growth plan area?
Is that addressed?
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm going to, I wonder if I can pull this up in my other screen. I wrote that in there. Basically, going from what I remember off, I'm just going to find it. I'd rather read what the language says than what I remember that it says. Give me 1 second there.
I remember that. I believe it's, it would be, I think it can be property that's adjoining that.
Yeah, here it is. Planned growth area corridors will extend 1/8 of a mile from the center line of the road. All areas within a planned growth area are to be considered inclusive of all parcels touched by the planned growth area. So, in other words, here, I can share it. That's found kind of here in the definition of planned growth area. In other words, the green lines that we see on our map here, we kind of understand go 1/8 of a mile in each direction. And if that 1/8 of a mile doesn't cover an entire parcel if it's, as long as it's touched by the parcel, it's considered inclusive. But if it's just adjoining, then it wouldn't be considered inclusive. So if you've got a parcel that touches the parcel that touches the green line, it wouldn't be considered inclusive of that planned growth area.
That answers my question, that's any clarification.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ethan, for your reference, the commissioner shared a couple of minor edits to some budget figures in the document that I'll share with you afterwards. So we may have
Okay.
a small clarification and revision to make
Sounds
there.
great.
Was that about the city school?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think that's the amount the city appropriates to the city school system. It's not their total budget, I believe.
Understood. Okay.
There are two locations inside the Fayetteville urban growth boundary that have a county growth boundary, also with a red line around it. That's all
Right
under county
here.
control, correct?
In here.
Say that again?
There's two locations in the Fayetteville urban growth boundary that have a, inside the red line, there's another red line with a green spot, which would indicate county, or, correct? I'm just wondering about
Right.
the mechanism of how that's
So-
going to be governed.
So it's my understanding that everything outside of Fayetteville city limits is governed by the county. How it grows is defined by whether it's the urban growth, the urban growth boundary, for all intents and purposes, is the total limit at which Fayetteville should be allowed to expand its borders. There are those two little green dots within the urban growth boundary because they were not part of Fayetteville's urban growth boundary in 2000, and they chose not to add them. I don't know, maybe if we pull up the parcel map or the satellite imaging, that might be county property, and so they may have just said, we don't need to bother with this at all. I'm not sure why in 2000 they were excluded, but they chose not to add it, and because of the proximity to the city and the fact that everything around it has the urban growth or planned growth boundary growth abilities, we went ahead and added it there because even if it doesn't change, it allows the county to control that.
I
So
know
he-
the answer to the one out of Kelso.
Right.
That was, the reason there was a donut hole there. The Coolies did not want their property to be put in urban growth zone at that time, and it was held out. The other one that's to the west of the island, I'm not for sure on that one. Yeah.
Okay.
At one time, Barbara Newman wanted her, I think what Ben that is, Morgan Ben held out of it, and that may be Morgan Ben. I'm not for sure on what that one is, but
Yeah.
I do know there was individual property owners that did not want their property in the urban growth area. And the one that's over on the east part, that was what that was. So we always call it the donut hole.
Right. And, that kind of highlights one of my quibbles with the legislation as it stands now. As in 2000, it made a lot of sense, but Tennessee's made some changes to the way that annexation happens. So now you have to have the property owner's permission. So, that they're protected from that either way at this point. But like we said, Fayetteville didn't make any changes, so they're still outside of the urban growth boundary of Fayetteville.
So practically speaking, from a zoning perspective, that's all county controlled anyway.
Yes.
And Ethan, just to confirm, both of those are what I'm seeing in green. Those are, we're indicating those as planned growth boundaries in our map.
It had the red line around
They're
it.
indicated.
Yeah, okay.
So, talking about the map, let me go back and I just want you to clarify. I know this is a kind of a poor representation. I think coded in or whatever with more fidelity on another map. Is there a map? I know there's a map system like our planning and zoning department use that shows everything by parcel. Is this map laid on top of that where they can go in if there's a specific question about whether or not a parcel is in the planned growth area or not? Can they zoom in and know from their system, yes, that this is actually, on that parcel or not?
Yeah, they wouldn't actually, the short answer to your question is yes. I don't know that we have handed, we're waiting, I guess, for county adoption before we send over any official files. I have those GIS files that we will turn over to county upon request. So those 4 GIS layer files will include the green areas here, the boundaries in black, the urban growth boundaries in this like inkish color. And then I think that they already have parcels, but I can send them the parcel layers that I have too. So I'll just put that all in one package. And then anybody who can use GIS at the county would be able to open that up. And they could zoom in down to the, down to like a really, really small scale where you're looking at a couple parcels on the screen.
Yep.
You'll just have to make sure when you cross-reference that, this green bar, we want to make sure it's exactly an eighth of a mile from the center line of the road, as opposed to just saying, oh, this is in the green or out of the green. This is a visual representation, which is why we put the linear definitions in the plan. So yeah, in other words, if you have a program that can zoom in high enough, and that we could make an Adobe PDF at that scale too. It would just be, it would cost a couple computers probably to crash because it would be a lot of information packed into a single document, and it would take forever to load and zoom in. So the first, like we can create it if you want it. We're happy to do that.
Just as long as they have access to it, because that will be a question, right? Somebody said,
Yeah.
is this in the planned growth area or not, this parcel? And they're gonna have to be able to drill down and say it is.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah, so we had talked about that earlier, where you wouldn't be able to do that with this
Right.
printed map or any version of this
Sure.
PDF map, but the data that we'll supply when the plan is adopted would be in a GIS format that the county's planning department or any other map user could import and then zoom into and assess relative to whatever other data they have in that mapping system, primarily parcels. Road center lines and parcels, so.
Are there other questions or comments on this?
So the question I sent you, is that in this, with the growth plan?
Refresh my memory on it.
So my question was, when you look at some of the numbers on the growth plan, I think it was, and the 20-year predictions, it had the county only growing 600 people over 20 years. That seems like almost like you don't think the county's going to grow any, while the city of Fayetteville had a larger growth. Petersburg almost matched the same kind of growth. Ardmore had growth, but Lincoln County, the unincorporated areas, only had like 600 people over 20 years in the growth in there. And I think that was in over on the numbers side of it. It wasn't in the mapping, but, and I didn't bring my copy with me. Yeah.
Ethan, can you speak to
Population
the,
projections, I don't know what page it's on, but.
yeah, I think he's got it pulled up there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's right here.
So why is that such a low number? That, to me, that's concerning that we don't think we're gonna grow any at all in 20 years. Basically, you're not growing any. 600 people to me.
I couldn't tell you why that number is so low. The legislation for the growth plan has a line that says that population must be calculated in coordination with the University of Tennessee. And the way that that plays out now is the Haslam Center for Business has a center that runs population numbers for the whole state. And so, in other words, this is using that Haslam Center of Business model, and this is what the University of Tennessee's model is output.
I know that they base this on census numbers, and first of all, I think this is, they need to update the data probably, but I do know, I have seen some of those maps, and they're by census tract. And within our county, it does show what is essentially movement, right? Some areas of the county are losing, or projected to lose residents, while others are going to grow substantially, specifically the southern middle region there. So I share your skepticism on that, as to not whether or not those numbers are accurate. And it may be that they, can produce a revision here or something. For the purposes of what we're doing, I'm not sure it necessarily has an impact as far as the growth plan. But to your point, I don't think that doesn't smell right. Something about that is off.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure how those numbers, and you explained it, how they were derived. But if you go back to the history of Lincoln County, when they were formed, it was about 30 to 35,000. We're about 30 to 35,000 today. So in the history of Lincoln County, we've stayed steady, and I guess that's what they base the numbers off of.
Could be.
I don't know. But to me, if you're doing a growth plan, I would thought you would have seen a larger growth number in there, especially with the influx, as you mentioned, coming out of Alabama. I think our 2020 census was all probably 5,000 to 10,000 people.
I'm not sure how they're calculating that and what numbers, what data they're using to generate this, but yeah, it just doesn't seem, just anecdotally, it's not accurate. You can just tell. There's the number of housing starts, there's a lot of data that you can look at that I'm not sure where they're getting it. It could be just a historical projection. It's part
I was
of
going to say,
It
it's also
doesn't match,
possible.
No.
it doesn't match what we've seen.
Yeah.
Everything in the southern part of the county that's not incorporated.
Right.
That doesn't match the
It's-
numbers.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's also possible if all of their data is based on trend lines and historic data, that we just don't have enough information on like how much the growth in Huntsville and North Alabama is going to impact growth in the county. That's, probably the historic data there hasn't caught up to what's actually happening yet. But I don't want to put words into the way that model or those trends are done. If you're wondering where those numbers came from, it's from the University of Tennessee's Haslam Center, and I can get a link to that's public information, so I can get a link to Daniel to send out to everyone if you want to explore that more. But
No, you've explained it, where it comes from. I don't know that if I had the link, I would understand it any more than the way you just explained it, but I appreciate that at least.
And again, for the purposes of what we're doing, we're not basing anything on those numbers. We're setting up a framework that we can have some flexibility, to allow for planned growth areas based on really what we're seeing on the ground. So that doesn't really influence what we're doing. I think in spite of this, however they're generating that data, I think we're still producing a document that's going to be beneficial. So it allows some flexibility.
The comprehensive, there's a typo when it's on page 8 of that. They're saying the population of Lincoln County is 36,694 as of the 2022 American Community Survey. It's just a typo, but it does relate to population projections, but it's not in the growth plan. This is in the comprehensive plan, but I don't think it makes any difference. But I agree with what y'all have said, as far as the growth plan, it's going to do what it's going to do.
And the numbers presented are a projection and don't correlate to how planned growth areas were selected in the map.
If you
So
look
not,
backwards on how we've grown, it's probably pretty correct. It's just that we seem to be speeding up our percentage of growth more than we have previously. But if you look just over our growth rate, going back to 2010, That's probably pretty accurate.
From trend lines, that's probably right, which is
Yeah,
probably
if we're
pretty
gonna do a
good.
straight line, that's probably pretty.
Yeah. That's a great point. What other questions? Anybody got any questions?
I think y'all done a good job.
So it's kind of hard to separate these two things in our brain, but for what we're doing now for the growth plan, again, the map is the main product that we're driving toward here, and there was a lot of input. We had a couple of public meetings at the courthouse and got some really great input that really changed this map a lot. But I think the product we got now is really good, and it allows us flexibility. And again, it's not mandating anything. It is actually protecting property owners because, it allows them to petition for rezoning if they want to, but they don't have to. So it's really giving them more flexibility and protection. So I think I think it's a good product.
I think when you get to the commission, the key thing is gonna be identifying those in the green area by parcel. I don't think you have to worry about what's in the brown gray. Those commissioners are gonna want to know what parcels are in that growth plan. And if we can get that, I think, it applies through the commission. But if I was a commissioner, I'd want to know that question too.
And so just a procedural issue, Mayor, what do you think the best way to do this is? Present a draft and give 30 days for public input, or how do you think that would have to be approved?
I think that's the proper way. We want them to know what's going on. I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of questions from their constituents, but I think they themselves will have questions about what parcels are in the growth plan.
Commissioner, one thought, maybe a recommendation to that point is if we leave here today with a recommendation to approve, possibly make that contingent on the minor edits that we might make to the document, and we could, publish a small technical memo so that the committee would know exactly what we edited on what page for a update to education budget numbers, that sort of thing. Possibly consider a presentation at maybe a work session of the county commission, and then have it on the next agenda. And at that work session, we could certainly present the document and provide the GIS files, allow the appropriate county department and staff to incorporate that into their map. That would also then allow commissioners time to ask, if there were questions about specific parcels, ask that of the same group that would have that GIS information relative to those specific areas, like they would years from now if there was a question that came up about jurisdictional planning.
That's a great idea.
And give a month for that to kind of work through the process. That might have some questions that we could be helpful and answer in that process. Then at the next meeting, hopefully that's resolved and the information's already in your system. It hasn't changed. We could entertain an edit, but hopefully the GIS information would be able to be used in that same time period.
That would be great. A real time, if they had a question, what parcels are in or out, they could go real time and pull it up and look and drill down into it. That's a great.
Allows the planning commission a little bit of time as well to consider the same information and have the data incorporated in their system and see how that process works. I'm not familiar with how the planning commission manages their GIS data and maps, but it gives the same time period for that group.
Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Charles? Okay, you got any comments? I'm not sure what the mechanism is here. If we call for a vote, I'm not sure, if we're following parliamentary procedure or not. I guess the process is we have to have a recommendation for approval from this steering committee in order for it to go to the county commission for them to review the final draft and then approve it and whatever, so.
I think you've answered all the questions as far as the people present. Of course, I don't know if we got not going to ever have a forum for as large as that committee is. I think committee members make a motion second and vote on it. I think that's approval from this committee.
Okay, we still have 2 more hurdles to get through anyway, so it's not like this is the final.
It's
So,
got to get in front of the next group of eyes.
It does.
Before it can proceed.
yeah, and there has been extensive, public exposure. I mean, we've really done, I think, an excellent job of getting it out there, so just, with that being said, somebody want to make a motion to that effect? We accept this and send it on to the county commission.
I'll make that motion.
Would you have a second on that? Mr. Johnson, second. All right.
One point for clarification, just
With the addition.
contingent on the minor revisions that we'll make based on comments received
Spoke of,
today. Yeah, just
budget or whatever.
typographical, clerical edits that we'll make today, and of course redistribute another draft, so.
Okay. All right, any other discussion on that? All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that we'll make those minor edits, and then we'll talk about, Houston, how we do this, how we present it to the county commission in a work session, or whatever we can do. I like the idea of the parcels being online where they can look at
Certainly.
it.
Yeah, and maybe we can even do a training session with the county planning department on some GIS, how to work that data specifically.
That'd be excellent. All right, well, that's great. That is the main goal of today's meeting. We got a few minutes here, and we won't take the whole time. I wanted to get your comments on, you got the draft of the comprehensive plan, and you're still taking input on that for edits or whatever. The intent or the hope is that, I think there's some minor things that we're going to talk about, maybe trying to do some more, to include some more specific dates or actionable items or whatever to tweak the final draft a little bit, and then that will be sent back out to the steering committee sometime early to mid-February, with the goal of having a meeting like this toward the end of February to get final approval on the comprehensive plan. So, is that good with everybody? You can continue to look at the draft. If you have comments, you can send them to me, and I'll make sure they get them. But did you want to address anything specifically, or do we want to wait until?
I think the only thing to note, really 2 components, is that at 9 o'clock this morning, we considered our draft of the comprehensive plan to be the final draft. We've incorporated, I think, all of the edits and questions and comments that we had received. And then we got one this morning that has prompted some thought. So we're in the process of considering that now. There could be some, again, minor edits and additions made to reinforce some of those areas that we're thinking about in the comprehensive plan. Again, that was hit our inbox just this morning. So other than that, the plan is really in its final form, and if there are any further comments, questions, edits from the steering committee, we prefer those as soon as possible so we can get those addressed, or at least responded to as quick as we can, and have a final draft, a final document ready for your consideration and action, however the steering committee intends to take it forward.
I can go over mine after they're pretty minor.
Okay, yeah, we can.
Great, sure, certainly.
Again, if you have anything, I think everybody has a copy of it in your inbox. If you don't, email me and I'll send you another copy. Look over it if you have suggestions or questions, whatever. We want to capture those. We're right at the end here. When we get all that rolled in, have a final draft, I will email it out to you as soon as we get it. And then I'll try to schedule something for another meeting late February to get the final approval. So, anything else?
And one last comment related to the comprehensive plan is that, I know that you know this, but just for clarity, the growth plan includes the action items. You know, the comprehensive plan would really, how it moves forward is really more, you have more discretion on how that document moves forward. There's not a law or a statutory requirement that dictates its approval process.
There's
So
a legal path for the growth plan.
There's a legal path for the
Yeah.
growth plan, and you have some
Comprehensive plan,
discretion on that
yeah.
related to the comprehensive plan. So just one distinction about how those documents move forward and
Yeah, so to that end, probably on that one, the county commission would be the final approver. I would assume it would go to the planning commission, and then the county commission would be the final approver on the comprehensive plan. So Ethan, you seem to agree with that. So.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical. The steering committee is purely advisory as far as this goes. You all are welcome to, at your discretion, make a recommendation to the planning commission if you so choose. But like Houston said, you guys have some leeway on how you approach that. And then the planning commission will also have the ability to make a recommendation one way or another. But final say comes down to the county commission on whether or not they adopt it.
So I would assume that if this body approves the final version of that sometime in late February, then the planning commission and the county commission would both get those final drafts at the same time and can be reviewing them, and then the planning commission can approve it and send it out that way, because the way it falls in the month, that would be logical to do. All right, any other input? Thank you all for your time. I appreciate you being here. I think we're making great progress, and so we will, again, I'll email you when we get this final draft on the comp plan, and this other will move forward. So
Thank you, Ethan.
so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Right.